All right, back to my original suggestion. Whatever you have two of, find the third one first. So when I look at this picture, the only angle I have is 90 degrees. The sides I have are 3 and 9. So I'm gonna find that last side first because that's my easiest place to start. I'm gonna take 3 squared plus x squared equals 9 squared. And I get an answer of about 8.49. For this, we can use all decimals, so don't worry about simplifying square roots or being exact. Just round it 2 decimal places and you should be fine. If your answers end up being, if you solve it differently than I do, if your answers are a 10th or a 100th off, that's okay, that's gonna happen. All right, now I need to find an angle, and this is probably where I would guess that people will struggle the most because you have to use a trig function and we're gonna end up having to use an inverse eventually, which some people are just a little iffy on. So I'm gonna go ahead and find J first. I'm just gonna put a J in there so we all know what angle we're looking at. In order to find an angle, I need 2 sides to put in my trig function ratio. So I'm gonna use the 3 and I'm gonna use the 9. That's adjacent and that's hypotenuse. So I'm going to use cosine. Remember, the angle always goes with the cosine. So if I don't know it, I put J equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Now thinking back to how we solve something that looks like this, the only way I can break up a cosine and an angle, they're stuck together, is to do the inverse cosine or the opposite of a cosine. So in my calculator, I'm putting cosine to the negative first power, or the inverse cosine, of 3 over 9. Again, make sure you're in degree mode. You're not going to be getting the correct answers. And my answer is 70.5 degrees. Once again, you can be finished with trig functions after you just do it once. Because now I have 2 angles. I have 90, I have 70.5, so I can just take 180 minus 90 minus 70.5. And I get an answer of 19.5 degrees. So again, to review, I found my last side first, found a missing angle, and in order to find a missing angle, you have to use a trig function. So in this case, it was cosine, and you use the inverse to find that missing angle. And then once I had 2 angles, I could take 180 minus the 2 angles I had to get the last one. All right, last example here. Again, I'm starting with 2 sides and 1 angle. If you're someone that gets overwhelmed easily with a lot of numbers in a picture, again, look and see, what do I have first? Find the third one. So if I have 14 and 16, I'm gonna find that last side first. Be careful with which side is your hypotenuse. It has to be in the right spot or you're not gonna get the right answer. Go ahead and solve that in your calculator. And when you do, you should get an answer of about 7.75 when you round correctly to 2 decimal places. It would be about 7.75. Now I need to find my angle that's missing, so I'm gonna start, it doesn't matter which one you start with. I'm gonna just start with L because that's the order that it goes in here. So I'm just gonna put an L in there so we see which one I'm looking at. According to angle L, I have the hypotenuse side that's right next to it, the long slanted side, and I have the adjacent. I could use this opposite if I wanted, but again, it's just a little bit uglier to use this decimal, 7.75, which is rounded, rather than using just whole numbers. It's a lot nicer. But if you use that, your answer is just gonna be a little bit different. Your decimal will just be a little bit different. So I'm gonna go with the cosine. Again, if you wanted to use these 2, it would be tangent. If you wanna use these 2, it would be sine. So the cosine of L is 14 over 16. And I'm gonna take the inverse cosine of both sides. So L equals the inverse cosine of 14 over 16. And when I round this one, I get 28.96 degrees. Now my last thing I need to find is an angle. So again, if I have 90, I have 28.96. The last thing I need to do is just subtract the 2 angles that I do have. All the way back to, we learned that in chapter 1. Don't forget to subtract your 90. That's an easy thing to overlook just because you see a square rather than the number 90. But you should get an answer of about 61.04. Again, if you solved it with a different method than I did, your decimals might be off by 1 or 2. And that's all you need to do. So like I said, I know some of you, this is probably really easy. You could do this on your own. And some people just get overwhelmed by the numbers. So if you're one of those people that gets overwhelmed by the numbers, try to take it step by step. If you want to redraw the picture, that's totally fine. I think that's a really good strategy to just look at the numbers that are important. So for today, while I'm not there, find a friend that can help you if you're struggling. And when we get back on Monday, we'll review these. I'm going to actually collect the worksheet just because I want to see what you could do today while I wasn't here. So make sure you show me if you are struggling, do what you can, and I'll see that. If you know what you're doing, obviously I expect to see your work complete and accurate. Okay, but don't waste the time you have today because we are going to have a quiz on this at the beginning of next week. It won't be Monday because I do want to review, but it will definitely be Tuesday then.